guys, my name is Nicolette Mashile. I am also known as the Financial Bunny. Welcome to the Financial Bunny TV. Today I want to talk about 5 laws that you need to know if you're going to go into the rental property space, if that's going to be your line of business or you are doing it as for investment purposes, right? But before I get into this video, please do remember none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please do speak to somebody that is certified and registered with the FSCA. So if you've been on my channel for a while and you've been on this journey with me, shout out to you first and foremost. I thank you very much. But you will also know that I had a very ambitious goal of having 10 rental properties by the time I turned the age of 30. Now, I did not achieve that goal. However, the girl is still focused on it. It's something that I still would love to achieve because for me, rental property are going to become my retirement plan, right? I want to have rental property by the time I hit retirement so that I can just collect the rent. And if I need to dispose of some properties, I'll dispose of some properties. And if I need to move out of the big mansion that I'll be living in by the time I reach retirement and I need to downsize, I will have an apartment that will be available for me to use. So that's ideally where I have this idea of having rental properties. And let me tell you actually something that's funny. The funny thing about my rental properties, I'm halfway there, so I've got 5 rental properties currently now. They're all tenanted, thank you God. And of all 5 of them, only 1 is bonded, so 1 has a bond on it. And the funny thing is that I actually managed to buy my rental properties while I was still working in employment, formal employment. When I became a self-employed or a business owner, I think I was only able to buy 1 property, then the one that I bonded, and then the last property the business actually bought. So it's a business asset, it doesn't belong to me, while the other properties are still in my name, and I'm hoping to put them in a trust if I ever do decide to have children, right? So what I found now as I've had these rental properties is that, and you've seen some of the stories that I've told before, you know, I have a lot of tenant issues, tenant experiences, and a whole lot of things that I found out. But last year, I actually had a SARS matter, and SARS actually made me write a business plan of how I was going to make some of my properties profitable. So I actually just thought, you know what, there's so much law that actually governs the rental space that I think a lot of us don't talk about. And today I want to do 5 of those laws that I think you should know if you are going to go into that space. And the first one is the Rental Housing Act. This is probably the Makoya of the rental space, especially when we're talking about residential property, because this governs the relationship between you as the landlord and the tenant that you're going to have. It's basically like a relationship tool between the two of you because it will say how the relationship should be governed, right? So for instance, it's one of the big things that it always stipulates is that you should have a written lease. So you can't just go to somebody and say, okay, so here are the keys, you know, we've got a lease between us that is based on, you know, a verbal communication. This month I'm going to charge you 3,000 Rand, next month I'm going to charge you 5,000 Rand. So basically what the Rental Housing Act does is that it stipulates how that relationship should actually go and what are the expectations from a tenant and what are the expectations from a landlord. Most of our leases are drawn so that they are in compliance with the Rental Housing Act. And if you do have a dispute between yourself and your tenant, then you go to the Rental Housing Tribunal and they play like a referee role between you and your tenant to see. It's more like a mediation. It's like you literally don't have to fight it out between you and your tenant. You can literally just go to, for instance, the Rental Housing Tribunal and they will try to mediate the situation between the two of you. I'll give you an example. One was one of my tenants moving in and painting my house with a cheap white paint. She didn't get permission from me. It stipulates in the lease that if you want to do something like that, you need to get permission from me as the landlord, and she didn't get permission from me. I didn't approve the paint that she had put out there, so I was really upset. And when she moved out, I then said, you need to repaint according to the paint that was original, so reinstate the house, and she didn't want to do that. So that is a situation that you would then take to the Rental Housing Tribunal, right? The second law that you need to know is, of course, the Consumer Protection Act. Now, this one is a very important one because it also protects the consumer. In this case, your consumer is, of course, your tenant. It is very important to understand the Consumer Protection Act. Why? Because it stipulates how how you should deal with somebody that is a consumer to you. So let's take it out of the rental landlord-tenant relationship. Let's talk, for instance, about cooling off period. In every single financial transaction, especially credit transactions, there is a cooling off period. Obviously, it's governed by different rules, but every single consumer needs to be able to say after 5 days or before 5 days is over, that actually, I don't want this contract anymore, I want to cancel this contract, right? Similar to if you're having a rental agreement or a rental lease. Again, the lease has to be compliant with the Consumer Protection Act. And I'll give you an example. Let's say the tenant now wants to cancel the lease. They should have a cancellation clause that is in the lease that stipulates how much notice they need to give you. And if you are going to charge them a fee, you need to stipulate it also in the lease so that they know that there is a cancellation fee. But the cancellation fee also needs to be fair, right? So you can't say if you are cancelling your lease, let's say 6 months into your lease and you're cancelling the lease, and then you write there they have to pay you for the rest of the lease period. Let's say it's a 12-month. So that means they have to pay you 6 months rent for them to be able to cancel. So the cancellation fee also needs to be fair, right? The third one is the PI Act. And this is a big one because a lot of landlords complain that the PI Act only favors the tenant and does not favor the landlord. However, in my experience, what I've found is that if you understand the PI Act and you do your processes according to the PI Act, you should be on the right side of the law, right? So the PI Act, PI stands for Prevention of Illegal Eviction. So there is a process in which you need to follow if you need to evict a tenant. And usually by the time you're evicting a tenant is when you're evicting a tenant that is occupying your space illegally, which means that they need to go through the process to become an illegal occupant of your property. What many people do is that a tenant might do something wrong now and then tomorrow they want to evict them. That is not allowed. There's an entire process that is stipulated in the PI Act that one needs to follow to be able to evict a tenant. Now I know this sounds painful for a landlord because ultimately 1 month of someone not paying you your rent, the bank is calling you, they want their money, they don't care that you and your tenant are having issues and the tenant is not paying. 1 month of them doing, that one thing, if you don't follow the process of giving them the notice, sending them the letter, giving them time to rectify their situation, they don't rectify it, then you've got to give them the notice to say, you are now occupying my premises illegally. Then if you don't follow that process or you break the process, it automatically means that you are in the wrong as a landlord. The other things that landlords do that is wrong is changing locks or selling your tenant's property without their knowledge, trying to recover your rental. The other thing that I notice that a lot of people do is that they'll take a part payment and then when the other half doesn't come, they want to then do the an illegal eviction immediately. Unfortunately, you are not allowed to do that. So it is important for you as a landlord to be in touch with the PI Act and actually understand what is the law that is stipulated in there so that you understand what rights you have when it comes to evicting an illegal occupant of your property. Now, very important again, the person has to become an illegal occupant, and for them to be illegal, there is a process. You need to cancel the lease first, and you give notice of cancellation of the lease, then you need to give notice of them rectifying the situation, and then you need to give them notice of them being an illegal occupant and giving them time to be able to move out. So it is a bit of a process and you need to know that process. The fourth one is if you are renting out sectional title property, there is a Sectional Titles Act. And this one I think is really for you as the landlord to know what your rights are as part now of the body corporate. Remember, if you are buying into a sectional title, you're basically buying into an existing scheme. That scheme basically is like a business. So let's say you've got the Nicolette Mashile sectional title scheme. So you will find Nicolette Mashile has built a complex. The complex has 20 units, and then she's maybe Nicolette still owns one, and then the other 19 are sold to different people. So then as a new buyer, you're buying into the Nicolette Mashile sectional title scheme, so you become part part of the body corporate. There are rules that you need to follow in part of the body corporate. There's levies that you need to be paying. There is insurances that the body corporate pays. For instance, if you're part of a body corporate, you probably will find out that they pay an insurance that takes care of if a geyser bursts. So if the geyser does burst, you don't need to pay upfront. You can actually claim from the insurance that the body corporate has taken out. But this also means that you are part and parcel of making the sectional title scheme solvent. So you need to pay your levies, you need to pay your electricity and all of that in time so that the entire scheme can stay solvent. So it's very important to understand what are your rights and responsibilities as somebody who's now part of a sectional title. So you do need to know the Sectional Titles Act. And then the last one, which is probably something that maybe many of you might not even think about, is of course the Income Tax Act in South Africa. It is very important because rental income is seen as income, and you need to declare that income. But the nice thing about it is that there are a whole lot of tax breaks, so you can actually have many deductions there: maintenance deductions, wear and tear, insurance, interest if you are financing the property. So there's a whole lot of tax breaks, but the big thing is to make sure that you are actually letting SARS know that you did collect an income, because if they find out that you did not, basically that means that you are trying to evade paying tax. So as I said, income that is made from rental property forms part of your income, especially if you are buying the properties in your name, and you've got to declare that income. So that example, situation I alluded to at the beginning of the video. So what had happened was I had a property that sat for 9 months and the property was not tenanted, and then I had to declare a loss at the end of the year to SARS, and SARS was like, okay, so you bought a property in South Africa and you're declaring a loss. What is the problem? So I had to explain to them why I'm declaring a loss, and then they actually asked me to write a whole business plan to explain how I plan to make this property profitable. Guys, I kid you not. It was like, I thought it was a joke, but SARS was like, no, we're not joking. You bought a property in South Africa that is meant to be profitable, so make sure that it's profitable so that we can get our cut. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually wild. But that's just the nature of the business that you are going to be in. So make sure that you know all of these laws. They are going to help you in the thriving of your rental business. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much for tuning in. I will see you guys on the next one. Again, please do remember, none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody that is certified and registered with the FSCA. Mwah! I will see you on the next one.